Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the April 2nd meeting of the San Dimas Rotary Club. My name is Steve Scott. I'm the club president. Thank you all so much for being here. Let's go around the room and introduce everybody. Doran Barnes, how are you today, sir? Hello, Doran.
Go with Dad.
Let's move on. Glenn Johnson, how are we doing today?
Doing well, doing well. This is Glenn Johnson. I'm a member of Satellite Rotary Club for Military Family Support.
Thanks for being here, Glenn. Hi, Dominic. How are things today, sir?
Doing fantastic. Excited to be here. Able to log in. I guess my audio works. So I'm ahead of Dorn right now.
All right. Thanks a lot. Anthony Porter, good to see you.
Oh, good. Member of Satellite Rotary, current president of Laverne San Dimas Educational Foundation.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. Hello, Marianne.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Fine, thank you. I'm Marianne Kistler. I am the current foundation chair. I have been with Rotary for over 30 years.
Yeah, I think you just passed 31, actually.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being here, Marianne. Hi, Margarita.
Hello, Margarita McGee, local estate planning attorney here in San Dimas.
Excellent. Thank you for being here today. If anybody else sneaks in as the meeting progresses, we will give them an opportunity to introduce themselves after our presentation. Very excited for our speaker today. Today, we're lucky enough to have Tina Ramirez, founder and president of Hardwired Global. Tina, thank you so much for taking time to be with us today. Love for you to start your presentation, and then when you're done, we'll save some time for Q&A at the end. But again, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks. And I put a video in the chat. Are you able to show that from your end? It's just like a little bit over a minute.
In just a moment, sure. You want me to see when we start that now?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, hang on a minute. Okay, here we go. How's all that?
Not on yet. It's actually all subtitled, so I guess that's good. Okay, I'll go ahead and just jump in now. I know that there's no sound on that, but the link is in the email and it was all subtitled, so I can share more in a bit about what that was all about. I am Tina Ramirez, and it's wonderful to be with you. I'm actually originally from Huntington Beach, California. I live in Oregon now, so I am not there, and I'm a fellow Rotarian. My current Rotary Club is the Tillamook Rotary Club up here in Oregon, where they make cheese and ice cream. So it's nice to be with you all. I'm going to just jump right in. I wanted to share a little bit about my background. Growing up in Orange County, my mom was actually from Virginia, and my dad's from California. They were both in the Air Force. That's how we ended up in California. And when I was around 11, my parents got divorced, and unfortunately, that's, happens. My dad ended up converting to a different religion. We came from a very religious family. But when that happened, it meant for about the next 10 years, because my dad and I are both very strong-willed and very close to each other, we ended up having very deep, divisive conversations, challenging one another's beliefs. And we just couldn't agree, and we couldn't convince the other person to give up their core beliefs to come to our side, which is what we thought had to happen. And I know I'm not the only one in this group that's had this kind of disagreement, whether it's about religion or politics or what have you. It's happening inside of families and friendships, and it's certainly happening on a global scale. It's painful and it's often very unproductive, which is why I know it's so tempting to look at conflict in the world today and just wish that everybody could get along. And if we could only just give a little bit of our own beliefs and not just be so set in our ways, then maybe we could be at peace. And I totally get that. I have spent the last 20 years working in conflict zones all over the world, from Iraq to Sudan and even in the United States Congress. And I've come to believe that we've been thinking about peace and the peace process the wrong way. Because I think contrary to what we would believe, or just popular belief, agreeing with one another on our deepest differences is not required for peace. And peace itself is not just the absence of conflict or even violence. It's so much more. For us at Hardwired, peace requires pluralism, which is a space where people can actively engage with one another across their deepest differences and recognize the values that others have and they bring to the table. And when we're doing that, like I did with my dad, there's going to be friction and there's going to be disagreement and, yes, even conflict. But if we're disagreeing, then we're free to express those ideas and beliefs that we hold dear. And it's only when everyone has that freedom and respects that freedom for one another that we can actually feel safe and begin to find peace. I came to this realization when I finally learned how to talk to my dad. I learned that I didn't have to compromise my own beliefs or feel afraid of him challenging them. And I didn't have to change him either. In fact, my position never changed, neither did his. But a beautiful thing happened and we grew closer. And once I got there, I think it was just so obvious. And that experience is really what made me passionate about religious freedom, which is what I've spent the last 20 plus years working on. During college, back in the 90s, there were conflicts going on all over the world. I remember at one time there were over 100 wars in the world, including the Balkans War, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And so I wanted to do something about that. That's what inspired me as a teacher. And then as after spending a long time in U.S. foreign policy, I worked for Congress and other organizations in Washington, D.C., I decided to start an organization called Hardwired. And Hardwired is working around the globe to build this culture of pluralism and respect for human rights and really religious freedom in countries where it doesn't exist, where people are severely persecuted for the kind of conversations and even conversions that my dad and I experienced. I know that in the US and much of the Western world, we have a culture of pluralism. We have laws that respect our ability to speak freely, and generally people with differing views can coexist. I know it's a challenge sometimes, but in many other parts of the world, this idea of pluralism isn't understood or practiced. It's just a foreign concept. And so that's specifically what Hardwired is working to change. And the video at the beginning showed you an example of Iraq, which I know it might sound crazy, but few places do give me more hope than that this work can be done than in Iraq. And so I want to share a little bit more about that. I guess it was 10 and a half years ago now. I was pregnant with my daughter. It was just a year after I started Hardwired. And I was in Iraq when a genocide began. I think you all might remember the scenes on the news. And some of you, it looks like you've served. So you may have even served over there. But ISIS swept in to northern Iraq. And literally overnight, they destroyed some of the world's oldest religious communities and historical sites. Of course, it decimated the country. Millions became refugees. We all know what happened. For 4 years, though, in northern Iraq, in that area of Mosul where ISIS controlled, they rewrote the educational curriculum, and they taught children how to hate and kill people that believe differently from them. Now, these children weren't hardwired, as we like to say, to hurt anyone. But like every human being, they were really hardwired to be free to think and believe what they wanted, and to live their lives in dignity and freedom. But without an intervention, when ISIS did finally get defeated and forced out of the region, they would have grown up thinking that the only ideas worth valuing were the ideas of ISIS, the horrific teachings that they had learned. And so if that was the case, they would have repeated this cycle of violence. And we wanted we wanted to help them. We wanted to stop that. So we began working in refugee camps even before ISIS was defeated back in 2015, and schools in the Kurdish area, to develop a unique curriculum to help students change the way they think about themselves and the people they've been taught to hate, so that when ISIS was defeated, they were able to go back in and work with the students there and begin to change things. And the results have been amazing, as I showed in that video. And there's one of my favorite stories that's come out of that is in Mosul. There was the teachers that we've trained hundreds of teachers now, actually 2,000. They are trained in how to implement or integrate these lessons on human rights and pluralism into their curriculum and think differently. They then replicate that with their students. And then the students don't just do lessons, but they also have a chance to perform a play about religious freedom and pluralism in their schools. So it's a multi-pronged or stepped process or phase process. But in Mosul, one of the teachers shared with me a story how a group of boys came up to him in the village one day and they said, teacher, we're so excited. We won our soccer game. You helped us. Thank you. And the teacher was a little confused because he doesn't coach soccer. He's an engineer by training and has nothing to do with sports. And he said, well, what do you guys mean? What happened? And they said, well, when you taught us that lesson, it changed the way we thought. Before, we had excluded this one kid because he is from a different religion. But after the lesson, we realized that maybe we should include him. And so we did. And before we included him, we were on a losing streak. We were horrible. But when he came, he ended up being really good. And then we won. And it might sound silly, but it was such a powerful testimony to these kids of the power, not just of sports, but of that lesson that they had learned that they hadn't really witnessed in their community prior to that. And it did change them. And I don't want you to think it's just about sports. So I'll share another story, which is that in one of the villages that was heavily dominated by ISIS, a mother whose family had been members of ISIS shared with us during one of the plays that was being performed at her school that she originally didn't want her daughter to participate in the play. And when we asked her why, she said, well, when I read the play, it sounded too religious. We didn't like it. And we said, well, what changed your mind? She said, well, then I learned that my daughter was going to be the little banana in the play. And in the play, the little banana gets bruised and the oranges and the apples come and help this little banana. And we use bananas because they're easier to talk about than religious communities, and it doesn't have as much, it doesn't cause as much spiny, like resistance. So people can move beyond the surface issue to think more deeply about really the core of what they're addressing. And so she said that during the conflict, her sister had lost her arms and her brother had lost her legs, but no one came to help them. But when she finished reading the play and realized her daughter was going to be the banana, and then that the little banana is helped by these other fruits, she realized that people were willing to help her child, which, as a mother, obviously had a really did something very moving to her. And I think that those two stories really illustrate what we're hearing, which is that you didn't hear that any of these people had to change their beliefs to be accepted or to be valued. All they had to do is recognize that everyone was worthy of dignity and help. And that's the whole point. Essentially, that's where Hardwired is getting at. And we're definitely not trying to sugarcoat anything. The situation in Iraq, as in many of the countries where we work, they're all conflict zones, is still plagued by lingering conflict. And yet today, after 10 years of working in this area, we've seen over 2,000 teachers be trained in this curriculum. And they're not just transforming one group of students that's gone through the lessons, but it's transformed their entire teaching. And so not only in Mosul are we working, but now the Kurdish government has asked us to work in it. And then another 17 of the 19 directorates of education across Iraq have asked us to come and transform their education system. So it's really powerful what's happening there. And I think that it's really showing the transformative impact of teaching pluralism and human rights in the classroom, and not just in the classroom, but the impact it can have on the community. And when you work with somebody who's just experienced genocide, like many of these people have, or have witnessed it firsthand, being committed against others, and you see them come to the realization that they don't have to live that way anymore, and their eyes light up with hope, it makes all of it worth it. And that's why I know that it's possible for us even here, to learn how to respect the humanity of anyone we think is the other, and then take it a step further and understand that our deepest differences don't have to be flashpoints of conflict, but can be starting points for vibrant conversation. Because we like to say at Hardwired that conflict never begins with things we agree on. So we like to start with agreeing on just this one thing, that everybody has the right to live according to the things that make life meaningful to them. And if we can agree on that one thing, which is what we like to say, it's how people are hardwired, then we can begin to move towards what we believe would bring true peace in many countries in the world today, including our own. So I will pause there, and then I'm happy to share more about the video and some of the countries that we're working in, and the methods, and if you would like to hear more about the United States.
I have a question, and I apologize if this is something that you're going to get into after the video. In terms of the lessons being taught to everybody, is it commonalities between religions, maybe, in a region that maybe this religion isn't practiced as much as this one, or is it commonalities amongst humanity, like, hey, we're all the same irrespective of our religion?
Yeah, so we're not teaching religion at all. And I'll throw some things in the chat that will just give you a little bit more details about it. But Hardwired's curriculum does not directly talk about religion. We're not teaching really even for religious literacy. Those are all interfaith dialogue, religious literacy. All those are elements of what come out of what we do, but they're not the core. The core is really teaching people that regardless of what they believe, can they get to the core, which is to recognize the inherent dignity and value of the other person standing alongside them, so that they have a starting point that doesn't focus on those deep differences, but the one thing that they do have in common, which is their humanity. And so the program uses fruit, and I just copied something in the chat to our bookstore. One of the books there is called Fruitopia, and Fruitopia is also, it's not just a children's book that we've written, it's the model for the simulation that we use, because when you're working in countries where religion is a lightning rod for discussion, being able to talk about religion in an indirect way helps people get outside of their prejudices and the things that would kind of hold them back from understanding even what the value of religion is. Ultimately, every human being has a conscience. We have a belief system, whatever that belief system is. 85% of the people in the world believe in a religion, an institutional religion. The other 15% or so may not believe in anything, but they have some set of beliefs that guide their life. And so, but the value of conscience in a human being's life is critically important to how they orient their entire world, not only here, but for eternity. And I think that's where oftentimes in these countries, when we don't recognize the religious impulse or the spiritual impulse in a human being, we ignore what's most important to them, and then we can't really get them to care about the things that would lead towards peace. And so valuing that in a person is really essential. But we use fruit. So fruit, you can put any kind of culture or belief system you want on a fruit, and you're not going to be offended. So it allows them to talk about the concepts of, wearing religious clothing, or choosing religious leaders, or religious speech, and things that can be different tribes and divisions, things that can be very controversial and lead to conflict in these countries in a way that removes the sensitive nature of it. And so it's a simulation that they go through. And then through that simulation, they're able to then open up the door to conversations about how they treat one another and the differences that they might have, what they misunderstand about each other, their fears of one another. So one Yazidi that went through the program said, I thought all Muslims were like ISIS. And then I realized these boys had to flee from ISIS just like me. And he thought they were all the same, and it helped him break down some misunderstandings he had about the others. It doesn't change his theology, but it definitely changed his perception of the other human being. And that's really the key.
Excellent. Thank you. So are you going to try to play the video again? Is that?
I don't know if it works. I had shared it with you all, but
Okay.
The link is there. You can watch it anytime. There's nothing, I mean, you saw it.
Yeah.
I used one that had all subtitles, so I think everybody saw it. But
Okay.
the work that Hardwired has been doing in Iraq for over 10 years now has been replicated now um, in with formal agreements that we have with the government of Iraq, but with Lebanon, Kosovo, and then in a number of other countries to a less formal extent, but in countries like Sudan, South Sudan, Nigeria, and many other places. And so we are in the process of doing an international foundation grant with the project we're doing in Kosovo on peace and education. And the government there has signed an official agreement with us because they see it as such an important way for them to help the children who really haven't been able to overcome the ideas of division that started during the Balkans War. Really, they're still kind of living in that mentality, unfortunately. And so we're helping the entire government of Kosovo with that. And because of the fruit and the success that we've had in Iraq, we believe it's possible there. But we've also been working with teachers across the United States as well, in a number of different ways, and providing professional development training for teachers to help them understand how to really value freedom of conscience in a community, in a school, and respect the values that students have, and vice versa.
How do you, it's probably too broad of a question. How how is the resistance or the to acceptance different in a place like Iraq to versus what you see in the States?
So it's actually more resistant in the United States than it would
Kind of
be
what I
in,
thought. Yeah.
yeah, and somewhere like Iraq. You know, when you've gone through the kind of situations you've gone through in these countries where they've hit rock bottom and they've seen genocide, I think you're a lot more open to anything. Now, I've worked in Iraq for 20 years, so I would say that that's not necessarily the case from, you know, prior to ISIS coming in. I don't think that they were as open, but they certainly are more open now. In the United States, when we're dealing with whether it's teachers or students, uh, there's just there's a lot of assumptions about what they need or don't need, about how to do things, and very rarely can anyone operationalize their rights under the U.S. Constitution or Bill of Rights. We found, and this is just, I've been a teacher of the U.S. Constitution, so I've seen it firsthand. So, and down in Orange County, so this is from my own personal experience as well. But yeah, it's there's definitely a lot of work to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. Does anybody else have any questions for Tina? Anyone? Anyone? Okay.
Has anyone in the club actually been to Iraq or served in Iraq?
Dominic, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd love to hear from you as well. Uh, you know,
Lives. Oh, probably lived very different lives. I was
yeah,
there in 2004, and then 05 and 06. So, you know, these are the opening days, the as they would put it, the Wild West days of the Iraq
yeah.
War. So it was a little bit different. But I didn't see a lot of schools, and the only one I remember is by.
I can barely hear you, Dominic. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was in Haditha. I don't know if you can hear me now. I was in Haditha, and that's the only school I saw. It was a Christian school, and they all had Christian uniforms, and it was interesting. But other than that, I don't think I ever saw a school.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with your volume, Dominic. I think everybody's having a hard time. It's just super, super low.
Any better?
No, I
No.
think that maybe the Bluetooth isn't connecting to it. I heard you a little bit. If you ever want to travel with us to see the programs in Iraq, I mean, you're always welcome. I don't know if you want to go back, but we have an agreement with the Kurdistan regional government as well as the Directorate of Education in Mosul. And then as we have resources, we'll expand across the rest of Iraq as well. But it is pretty exciting to see the transformation because of so much, you know, it's just that it's such a bad situation there. on the 20th anniversary of the U.S. war in Iraq, so in 2023, PBS actually came and did a documentary on our work in Iraq, and I can share those links with you as well. Yeah, and so they just came out with the third episode of that documentary last October, and that was really neat to be able to see what I'm just going to find it really quick, but to see just to see the transformation over a decade and on the 20th anniversary is really powerful. I think it was exciting and hopefully encouraging for a lot of the Americans that served there and gave so much to be able to see what that the Iraqis themselves are taking the freedom into their own hands that they that so many of you fought for. So
Absolutely. Going back to Iraq is an interesting idea.
some people it's a no-go and some people it's interesting. So but
the U.S. government saw fit that I had to go a couple of times. So I'd be interested to see if there was any bit of a difference from back in the day. I walked out of that place at 19, I think. 19, 20, no, 21, actually. The first time I got there, I was 18. So, like I said,
Wow.
one school, that's all I had. And it was a Christian school. So I'd be interested to see if there was anything that changed.
Yeah, well, my brother served in Iraq as well. So it's definitely a totally different perspective than what I've seen. Yeah.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. Even Mosul, I think what's interesting is that prior to the defeat of ISIS in northern Iraq, I wouldn't even travel to Mosul. I went there like once, I think, but I was very much like on the bottom of the car as we went through it. But it wasn't even safe. But today it's a lot more safe. So at least for the work we do.
Perfect. When I was there, it was not safe.
No, I would imagine. Yeah. And to me, that was, I think, what's so fascinating is that there's definitely a change. So.
Is that the one? Are you just doing schools in that area, or is it across Iraq itself?
So we have an agreement with the Kurdish government, which is around 6 cities. So Sulaymaniyah, Halabja, Erbil, Dohuk, Zakho, Saran, but the whole area. And then in Mosul, we're all over. We're just in the process of expanding into Sinjar. So we've done Mosul proper and many of the villages surrounding Mosul. We did 20 schools last year where they reintegrated the families from ISIS. And then we'll start in Sinjar this year.
So slowly but surely just kind of taking over the country.
Yeah,
Sounds
but we're
familiar.
training the government official trainers so that they can sustain it long term. So it's very much a locally sustained operation. We're a very small organization, so that's our goal. It's not, yeah.
I love it. Love to hear it. Love to hear something's happening.
So can I email you the links are not showing up in the chat, so I can forward them to you. I think, Steve, do you have an email address that I can get?
Yeah, I'll put it in here right now.
Okay. And I focus mostly on Iraq, but obviously we're doing our Rotary Foundation grant on Kosovo, which is very similar, but just obviously their experience was, 20 plus years ago, not in the last decade. So sometimes but the issues are still there, sadly. And we know that if you don't address them with kids, that unfortunately that trauma affects them and how they can respond to crises. So, yeah, but I appreciate everybody letting me share with you about Hardwired, and I'll send this document over to you right now.
Thank you for sending the document and thank you for taking time to be with us. Thank you for the brave work that you and your organization is doing. I mean, that's the way we get past so much of this stuff, be it, some type of religious persecution, any type of bigotry is through education and through education of young people. So they realize we're all very similar, irrespective of pick whatever. So thank you again for taking time, Tina. We really do appreciate it. And thanks for being a Rotarian too.
You're welcome. Well, it's great being with you all. Have a great rest of your meeting.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Okay, folks, let's move on to the next portion of our meeting. Our fine master is not here, which means he gets fined next time he is. But I'll take the reins since what the heck. Does anybody have anybody that they would like to fine themselves or anything they'd like to fine themselves for? Is anything fine? Is anything not fine? Raise your hand. Let me know. and I could get Marianne on here. Marianne used to just randomly find people, and she could be nasty. So uh, be prepared.
Well, rather than
All right.
have Mary Ann find me, I on the way back from 29 Palms, I tire truck exploded, and the tread took out a wheel well and the undercarriage of the car, and it was just terrible, terrible, terrible. So I'll find myself $7.50 for that.
Okay. That's fair. Thank you, Raymond. Anybody else?
No good deed goes unpunished, Raymond.
That's
That's
right.
for sure.
That's right.
Okay, let's move on to Action 360. Raymond, why don't you talk a little bit about um, anything else about the food drive that you want to bring up?
Well, we were out at 29 Palms at the luncheon, and what you're looking at there is the Rotary emblem, and speaking there is the commanding general of the Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Facility, Brigadier General Mark Klingen. And I got to tell you, he sat out in the audience, and that's the only time that I've been. The way he just stared, I thought he was going to get up and hurt me at the moment. At that moment, a pretty scary looking guy. But that flashed the Rotary emblem right when he was speaking. They were very appreciative of the food drive. Our total count was we're over 30 tons now, and if you didn't see the forklifts that we were using to load and unload stuff, that was pretty cool. I also will let you know that Amanda Huffman, she is a retired Air Force captain, member of the Satellite Rotary Club, went out and had coffee Monday morning with LA Air Force Base she's going to be our liaison with them. And I've said I went and talked to Sean Casey, who is a former soldier, and he is going to take over as the liaison for Fort Irwin. And so now
Perfect.
we have the four military bases. We have somebody who's in charge of them, which should make it run a little bit smoother. And Dominic was recognized by the Armed Services YMCA and the Marine Corps out there for the work the Satellite Rotary Club has done. So Dominic, congratulations.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I,
Anything you want to add about that?
yeah, well, I mean, I also, it's a brigadier general, so they don't ever look happy. Neither does the sergeant major sitting next to him. The vice admiral look a little more happy, but that's standard. But just to add though, yeah, don't. I appreciate the credit. No, I'm just the guy that's in the suit. That's his turn on the wheel to go out there and give a speech. This is, as I've said before, and you've heard me say, all of you, this is not just me. This is everyone else. To pretend it was just me is nonsensical. I'm just the guy that gets to get the plaque also. So listen, you got the same plaque I did. Giant. What was it? Like, did you? I don't know if you hung it up in your office or not, but we got the giant Eagle Globe and Anchor. Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
So that was pretty neat. And I
I
just collected
got
the certificate.
I got
So,
another thing that goes in a box in the attic for one of my children to throw away after I pass away. Uh,
exactly.
which may be soon. So we'll have something to look forward to. Hey, so the only thing I want to add about that is while I was out there, I was talking to Admiral French, who is the CEO of the YMCA, Armed Services YMCA, about why they don't have a YMCA at Fort Irwin, which is more remote than 29 Palms. Uh, but also I was explaining to him how we've now done the DBA for feeding military families and how they're kind of moving towards its own nonprofit. To which he said, I will be a volunteer board member for you, and I will get you a dozen general officers who would sit on your board. So he was very excited about what we do because we've really paved the way for perhaps a nationwide solution. So I'm pretty excited about the work we're doing.
Stoked about that. Really does give
That's
us a
fantastic.
big leg up on everything.
The other thing is, let's talk briefly about Ryla. Steve?
Yeah. Yeah. So Ryla was last week. We got all five kids signed up, got their paperwork done. Uh, Regatta gave me the green light on everything, so that was a relief. What we normally do after a Ryla or TLC is have a dinner, bring pizza, and invite the kids and the parents to come talk about their experience. We need to figure out a date to do that. Um, And so we'd like to do that within the next month. One other thing about RILA and TLC, this upcoming year, they are actually switching them. So TLC will be in March and RILA will be in December. Anthony, something to think about. That just means that we would push back seeking out the junior high students, the eighth graders, until after the start of the new year. And I'll, touch base with Sean Casey so he knows that we'll need a little bit of a head start on RILA. But we need to figure out a date. Raymond, you and I can chat about that and identify what we think is the best date.
Okay.
And I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be on the day where we have a board meeting scheduled. We can just do it, do it on a Wednesday night or a Thursday night, whatever works for us.
Sure, and let's go with we'll talk offline. Following up on that, last week was Strive for Success. And so that was very well attended, and the foundation paid for that. It was a little over $800. And that is all of the kids at Chaparral High School. That's kind of their parent teacher night where they get together. For most, just so there's some people here who don't know, when we started this program, I think it was 7 years ago now.
Yeah.
The problem with the Chaparral, the continuation high school, was getting parents to come to the parent teacher night. But they started to hold it at a bowling alley, and we paid for the first year, and they get 75, 80 parents show up now. And so they have wonderful participation. The teachers then get to speak with the parents in an informal setting, while bowling is done by both parents and teachers and students working together. And so it just was a really good thing for them. And it's on its 7th year. And so we're really pleased that we continue to support that, which brings up the next thing. We really need to talk about a fundraiser so we can get good stuff.
Yes, we do. Yeah, that'll be something that we discuss next week at the board meeting. Is it next week?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Well, speaking of that, why don't you throw the calendar up there?
Okay, here it comes. Okay, so board meeting is April 9th, which is next week. And then after that, we've got Lester Barron. He's going to come in and talk about Dominica Livestock Cooperative, which is a farm cooperative done in the Caribbean. Really interesting stuff. We're still tentative on old Chip here. I'll talk later about him. But then 7 leadership habits for engaged, accountable teams, crime survivors, Matt Lyons, and our final one for this Rotary year will be the Hope Team with Melanie Sitz. And we already have developed up the schedule for next year all the way. Well, that's an entire year right there, but we don't have any speakers. So I need speaker suggestions and leads, but you should also put in your calendars August 21st and August 23rd. Those are the next food drive dates. And lastly, coming up, that's not on our calendar, is May 6th. The Rotary is one of the major sponsors of Teacher of the Year this time. So, and a lot of us are involved in that.
Raymond, one of the things I was thinking of is maybe we could have just kind of a City of San Dimas theme speaker month, where maybe we get the city planner, maybe we get somebody from the senior center, maybe we get somebody from Parks and Rec to kind of talk about what's going on throughout the city, since we're so involved. But as opposed to waiting for Emmett's State of the City, if we just got a breakdown of different departments, I thought that'd be a good way to get a month worth of speakers.
Let me talk to Brad. Maybe the thing to do is to schedule a half a dozen apartments with 10 minutes each over 2 meetings, and then we'd have 6 different city speakers, and that would go out over KWST, so it'd be beneficial to him also. I'll speak to Brad Peterson and put that in the work.
Okay. Fantastic. Okay, folks. Thank you everybody for showing up today. We will see everybody next week for the board meeting. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.